Parents of Reddit, what was the worst thing your kid ever did that made you momentarily wish you didn't have kids? My son was about 7. He discovered my wireless hot glue gun from my craft room. I was using it that afternoon and stopped to make dinner. I didn't shut off the gun. Of course I didn't get to my craft space till much later and noticed it wasn't there. Turns out my son took it and hot glued all the electrical outlets he could find. I mean, all of them. I bet that was a blast to fix. Oh man. My kids butted our dog. You ever try to catch a freshly buttered chihuahua? To those that gave me silvers and golds, thank you from the bottom of my heart and the top of my lungs. I don't know what to do with it, but it made me smile a big fat smile and I sure needed it today. No, but I have butter and a chihuahua, so I think you've just invented a new sport. One time, they decided it would be fun to play in the bathroom. It just so happened that I left my wallet and a pair of pants on the floor. They flushed about $400 down the toilet. I was talking to an older gentleman at a softball game. My 5-year-old son was standing by us, patiently listening. With no warning, he punched the old guy as hard as he could in the berries. The old guy collapsed in pain. I asked my son later why he did that. He had no explanation, just wanted to do it. My 3-year-old got diarrhea at the park this weekend. We were 1-2 mile walk from home with no bathroom in sight. I wanted to disappear. I keep a change of clothes in my 3 years' bag just in case and plenty of wipes pull-ups, as well as a plastic bag when I remember to do it lol. But my son has a digestive problem, so diarrhea is more likely with him. I come prepared for anything. It was early morning, and I was sleeping in my bed. My 2-year-old woke up before me, and decided that she was going to wake me as well. She climbed out of her bed, went into the kitchen, made a set of stairs to get the kitchen knives, grabbed the knife, and headed to my bed. She climbed into my bed, and stabbed me an inch below my eye. I woke with her holding said knife over my head, and her giggling like the bride of Chucky. Grab the priest. A phase of having constant tantrums and explosive meltdowns over absolutely everything, like Ali as long as she was awake, only lasted a few months, but it was exhausting and depressing and every now and again just made me wish I'd never bothered. I'm starting to think all kids go through a phase like this. My son never outgrew it. He's 12 and still has meltdowns over everything. When my then 3-4-year-old daughter asked me very loudly why I don't have down boobies like the elder lady in the swimming pool change room that was standing right next to us getting dressed, she actually laughed and said to enjoy my up boobies while I still had them, but I was still dying inside. When the moody teenage daughter was telling her friends at school that we didn't feed her and we were always angry with her and we hit her, and a teacher overheard and reported us to child services. So we had to be investigated for child neglect, and they had to speak with each of our kids and interview them independently. My wife and I are still reeling from that one. Momentarily, I had to take my wife to the emergency room early one morning for intense stomach pain. Our kids were 2 and 3, and it was about 1 AM, so they went with us. I packed a bag with snacks and toys, and loaded everyone up. It was the middle of the night when we got there, but we still had to park a significant distance from the entrance. When wife was back with the doc, my son, 2 years old, was running around and playing. He bumped his head lightly and started shrieking an ungodly banshee wail. I decided we would wait in the car and maybe drive around a little, and then hopefully go to sleep. So I'm carrying the bag and 2 struggling angry demon preschoolers the quarter-mile to the car. At this point my son isn't shrieking, but he's not happy. We encountered an elderly couple and my daughter, 3 years old, looks them dead in the face and says, "Hey, he's not my parent." I was exhausted and frustrated and my arms were tired from carrying them. I didn't want to stop and have the conversation, and I panicked a little. I sped up, got to the car, loaded them up and left in a hurry. I didn't get arrested, though. I was glad at the time. Now I'm kinda peeved that the old folks just let me go. Here are the kids. Officer runs away. I have 2 girls who are about 6 months apart in age, adopted. One morning I woke up to the worst horror. The younger one managed to climb into the older one's crib and then they proceeded to strip each other naked and paint each other and what they could of the crib and room. in each other's crap. Seeing them both standing there grinning gave the phrase crap eating grin a whole new meaning. It was a crappy morning to say the least. 2 girls, 1 crib. My kids had a favorite chicken. It got picked on by the other chickens, so they protected it. One time I heard a pathetic noise coming out of a lidless 55-gallon drum. Expecting a squirrel, I carefully glanced in and saw a big 15-gal nursery pot upside down in there. I lifted it to find a wet, cold, and thoroughly miserable chicken standing on a few bricks surrounded by water. My kids had thoughtlessly trapped the chicken in there and then, being 5 and 2, had forgotten all about it. I was livid. Wife and I had a long talk about what it all meant, catastrophizing the whole thing, but in the end it was just 2 stupid kids not thinking things through because they didn't have the mental agency to understand their actions had far-reaching results. LPT, we're still freaking waiting for them to start thinking things through. Can I see a chicken? My daughter from the ages of about 3-months-old to 3 years old screamed bloody murder every time she was put down, and only slept about an hour or 2 at a time. We found out later she has fairly severe autism, which explains it, but the sleep deprivation and lack of personal space ever. I couldn't even shower unless I wanted to listen to her scream like someone was murdering her. Was hellish. She's grown out of it now and is an awesome kid, although she is now entering puberty and her emotions are starting to go a bit haywire. But I can sleep for 6 hours straight, which helps me deal with it much better. When my son giggled after headbutting me very hard in the temple, wanted to leave that small child out for the jaws there for a bit. Oh, also every time he screeches like a velociraptor when he doesn't get his way. Remember, you can't kill him. LOL. The other day my 5-year-old walks up to a group of Indian women and loudly goes, "What's with the dots on your foreheads?" Pause. No response. "What's with the dots on your foreheads?" I drag him away saying it's part of their religion blah blah blah, and he goes, "What's a religion?" Clearly nailing this whole parenting thing. Early 90s, and as my mom and I were walking out of the library we see a group of mohawk-haired, leather-wearing, metal stud sporting punks. In my infinite toddler wisdom I pointed and shouted, "Look mom, pirates." My mother says she thought we were going to be murdered. Alas, punks are regular people who also laugh when little kids do funny crap. I'm 15 weeks pregnant and have a 15-month-old. For those who haven't been pregnant before, the first trimester is brutal for exhaustion. With my first, I slept 10 hours a night and took a 2-hour nap every day. These days I'm incredibly lucky if I get 7 hours a night, and definitely no nap. So one day about a month ago I barely slept because I had insomnia at night, and my kid relentlessly wakes up between 5:30 am and 6:30 am. I was dead on my feet, so I decided to try and lie down on the couch and maybe catch a cat nap while my kid played. He saw me lying on the couch, walked up to me and head-butted me as hard as he could right in the bridge of the nose. I heard a crunch and could have sworn it was broken. It hurt so badly. In that moment, I regretted every life decision that had led me to that point. My very mature adult response was to burst into hysterical tears and ask him why he's so mean to me. I think that freaked him out more than yelling would have. That definitely was a more impactful response than yelling. I mean, frick, it made me feel guilty. Mom, 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 mama, 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 mommy, mommy, mommy. Not the worst thing, but sometimes you just wish you could be invisible, or maybe just call their father's name for once. Ah yes, I remember I had a name once. This happened today. I live in Nebraska and in March we had a devastating flood. My basement was completely destroyed and my insurance company wouldn't cover any of it. Outside water, not inside water. So my husband and I spent the last 2.5 months and $6,000 fixing it ourselves. On Saturday we put the final finishing touches on it, ready to have company back over and live in our whole house again. Hooray. Until this morning, my husband checked the sump as he usually does. Everything looked great, basement is dry and all systems go. That was 6:30 am. At 7 am my children all decided to go downstairs and watch a show. That's okay too. Except for when the sump pump stopped working and my basement flooded again. They waited 2 whole freaking hours while watching the water rise before coming upstairs to tell me. So yeah, today is when I wished I didn't have kids. To be fair, 2 hours might still be sooner than you would have found out otherwise. Still sucks though. My kids would probably do the same thing. I'm sure other things will happen as he gets older. However, at 15 months, it's the constant biting and pulling my hair. Like at least once a day I'm like, why did I have a kid? I guess I'm thankful he doesn't bite other kids at daycare and only bites me. My daycare did daily report cards. My mom still has one that reads, Zukazuk bit 123 of her friends today. My mom was watching and told her to go to her room. She took scissors and cut off 75% of her hair that was down to her waist and gave herself a Joe Dirt mullet. Oh no, I've always been scared of one of my kids cutting their hair. When I was learning to talk, I parroted everything I heard. One time my mom had me in a stroller at the mall and this black guy walks out of a store and yells what's up my N at someone. And teeny little white me just screams my N. The guy looked over at us and my mom starts apologizing a ton. Saying I'm learning to talk and I'm a parrot right now. And I chime in with a parrot and he thought it was frickin' hilarious. Holy crap, this is incredible. I have twins. They were about 8 when this happened, I think. But they ripped open our next door neighbor's bagged leaves and jumped in them and basically just threw them everywhere and erased all the progress they'd made cleaning their yard up. I was about 8 months pregnant at the time and we had a super kid friendly neighborhood. So I didn't know it had happened at first since they used to run with the kid gang during the day. When I found out, I made them go over and apologize and made them help me bag up all of the leaves again. It was definitely one of the most embarrassing things ever. Oh, and one of them broke a teacher's nose in 1st grade too. So that was a fun school trip. I need you to elaborate on that last bit, please. Not mine, but my cousin's parents. A few years ago, my aunt told me about how my cousin spent around $800 to buy in-game items in his mobile game. It was some kind of first-person shooter. He received a gadget ban for a couple of months afterwards. This is like the new school version of running up long-distance calls on the phone bill. I remember when my brother had a pen pal in Japan and decided to start calling her. Oh man. I thought my mom would actually kill him when she got that phone bill. My oldest at the time was 7 now. I call this event the shitpocalypse. Decided to roll her poop into a ball and play with it. It was everywhere. Face, hands, carpet, on brothers, face. God, it was awful. My very curious 10-year-old had an old phone and was only supposed to be able to make calls and texts only. I thought we put some heavy restrictions on the phone. My husband and I learned the hard way that we didn't. My brother-in-law told me that my son told him that he and his sister watched a video where a girl puts a man's pee-pee in her mouth. Apparently, my daughter had downloaded a porno and decided to watch it while having a sleepover with her younger brother, who was 4. She said she didn't know her brother was awake and watching. I wanted to quit being a parent that day when my brother-in-law told me what happened. Oh no, at least you found out about it so you could make sure it doesn't happen again, but oof. We got called into my son's summer camp program because he had been tormenting a child with autism for weeks. We knew the family from church, and as an added bonus, both of my daughters live with involved disabilities, including one with autism. You could tell the director thought we were awful parents. I was horrified. My friend brought her son over to play with mine for the afternoon. We were sitting on the couch chatting, while the boys played in my son's room down the hall. I could hear giggling and such, but didn't think much of it. Suddenly I hear them creeping down the hallway, muffled laughing. They walk into the living room. My son has something draped around his neck. My eyes widen in horror. He is wearing my magic bullet vibrator around his neck like an Argyle sweater on a day at the country club. My son speaks up and says, "Hey mom, what is this thing?" I barely squeak out, "Where did you find that?" He replies, "We were jumping on your bed and then we heard a buzzing. We looked and this was under the blanket." Oh my freaking god. I can feel my friend looking at me. "Please give that to me. It's for grown-ups. For sore muscles. It's not a toy." It was the best I could come up with on the spot. Without missing a beat, my friend's son looks at mine and says, "I guess we probably shouldn't have rubbed this thing on our faces." Dead. Not a parent but the kid. Add 2. 5 years old. I went to kindergarten for the very first time. Most kids cry. I didn't. I slapped the teacher in the face when she bent over to greet me. Pretty sure my mom regretted having a second kid. Around the same time, or a little later, I took the bus with my mom. At one point a nice African gentleman boarded. Now, it is important to know that at this point I had not seen a lot of people of color. Apparently, when I saw him, I pointed at him and screamed, "Look mommy, a chocolate man." The man laughed his butt off while my mom wanted to die from embarrassment. When I was a kid I was at the park and there was an Asian family. I grew up in a very ethnically homogeneous country and apparently pointed at them and shouted, "Look mommy, a Power Ranger." My oldest son, now 4, started biting and hitting everyone starting at 18 months. He would get so angry at any perceived injustice that he would shake. He didn't have many words and has always been on the later side of milestones. As soon as we would start to be concerned, he'd suddenly be able to do things. He's the epitome of a Sour Patch Kid whose emotions could turn on a dime. We got him into OT last year because he couldn't tolerate loud noises and a lot of textures anymore. He started regressing and wouldn't climb stairs. He was fearful and angry. I reduced my hours at work, cut my salary significantly, and took him to OT every Monday. We did everything the therapist suggested. He's a completely different kid now. Some of it is probably normal development that comes with having a wider vocabulary, but he's able to voice that he's uncomfortable before losing his crap. A year ago I thought I must be a horrible parent. I thought my kid was a terrible person and I didn't know what to do. He has a lot more emotional regulation, confidence, and coping skills. We enjoy each other's company and I'm no longer a punching bag. I regretted becoming a parent for 18 months straight, aside from good moments here and there. OT saved our relationship, and not to be dramatic, but probably my life. Since having his little brother 5 months ago, I've gone through terrible postpartum depression and been through a super traumatic event causing PTSD. I've hit rock bottom and I have nothing to give to anyone but my kids and work to stay employed. If things between my oldest and myself weren't so good, I'm not sure I'd have anything to give. Sorry for the novel. TLDR. OT is a lifesaver. I have a child with sensory issues as well, so I kinda know what you went through. Although he still has some behavioral issues, getting therapy and finding the right meds for him has been a lifesaver. I also went through many times that I just thought my kid was just a terrible person and sometimes thought maybe I just wasn't cut out to be a mom. I'm glad therapy helped you guys so much. Not a parent, just an older brother raising sisters. One of them is a compulsive liar and loves to throw tantrums when things don't go her way. I typically just tell her that I don't care when she starts. It usually results in her keeping quiet for a bit. 2. One time when my younger two were toddlers, 3 years and 4 years, they decided to pee inside a bunch of cups that the rest of us drink from. 3. Last horror story that hit me the hardest. I decided to take a nap for about an hour. The baby gate was up, the TV was on, and they were pretty entertained. I woke up from my nap to wake up to 2 kids without diapers on, one covered in tea, the living room being trashed, and worst of all, my Yu-Gi-Oh cards, 1000 plus cards being scattered around and torn to absolute shreds. RIP my heretic dragon deck. F for the Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Not a parent but was a full-time nanny, now part-time. When my cousin had her first son, everyone swears that all he wanted to do was move. But as most infants can't do a whole lot of moving for the first few months, his solution was to scream about it and refuse to nap. And when he did nap, it had to be on you or he'd scream bloody murder. And if his bottle wasn't ready as soon as he woke up, be prepared for more screaming. This went on, with less and less intensity as he gained more mobility, for the first 7 months of his life. Then he started walking, at 7 months because he wanted to, I guess, and became a completely different nightmare but much more tolerable. With her second son, she was blessed with many months of maternity leave, so he didn't get used to me as quickly as her first. He would scream like he was dying if I tried to put him to sleep when he wanted to be breastfed to sleep. Those are the times I kinda regretted agreeing to being a nanny, especially since it was my first experiences with babies. But I felt most bad for my cousin and her husband with their first, since nothing would soothe him. But now he's a rowdy but pretty sweet 2-year-old that told me he loves me for the first time, without coaxing, on my birthday. And the second is also a little less rowdy, very sweet 1-year-old, and I love them so much. I don't really miss them as infants though. My kids have never done anything that made me wish I didn't have kids, but sitting in the waiting room while my infant son had open heart surgery made me question momentarily if having 2 kids so close in age was a good idea. My daughter had just turned 2 and I was a stay-at-home dad with a wife who worked a lot, so it was just me and my daughter during the day. Her little brother was a bit of a surprise. We signed back up with our adoption agency a few months prior but expected a bit of a wait like we had with our daughter. The call came quickly and the adoption agent asked us if we were open to adopting a newborn baby who was born with a congenital heart defect. My daughter was 18 months old at the time, and even though there were a million reasons to say no, we told them that we wanted to adopt. He had his heart surgery when he was 6 months old and I was freaking out in the waiting room knowing that my tiny frail baby was being opened up to have surgery on a major organ. And while I was sitting there freaking out wondering if he would be okay, knowing that there was nothing I could do, my daughter was sitting at her uncle's house waiting for us to come get her. It was the first moment I really realized that having 2 kids sometimes meant having to miss out on the other one. For what it's worth, my kids are teens now and that was the only time I ever regretted it. They are so close and are okay if I have to dip out early on the orchestra concert to head across town and watch the last 2 innings of the baseball game. My son's surgery went well, and other than the scar and follow-ups with the cardiologist, no one would ever know that he had open heart surgery. Happy story. My son was 12. As we were walking out of The Force Awakens, he yelled out that Han Solo dies, while people were waiting in line to buy tickets for the movie. Someone just spoiled Endgame for him last month. Sweet, sweet karma. One morning I was trying to enjoy a cup of coffee. As I was taking a sip, my 4-year-old walked up and, with the tiniest balled up fist, punched me right in the coffee cup, which in turn whacked off of my front teeth. Nothing broke, thank goodness, but dang, I was absolutely stunned. I couldn't believe what had just happened. All I could do was sit there and stare at him in shock. My daughter started to cry and hit her bed because she said that she wanted a yellow tongue. I locked myself in the bathroom and started to cry. My son was in 4th grade when we got an email from his teacher that he stole some things from another kid. Low grade stuff, and he was working through some things, so it was sorted out with some discipline and coaching. My daughter is in 2nd grade and is quite the sass machine. Her mouth is going to get her in some crap one of these days. I've just come to realize that all kids are buttholes. It's just a matter of when and for how long. You might not like them, just as long as you love them. Not a parent, the child here. My smart self decided that the socket which we had was not pleasing, so I decided to put another one in its place. At the time my family was basically stealing electricity from the factory right next to us, so the circuit was kinda connected. Not sure about the specifics. As an expert, I did not cut off the electricity in our house before doing the surgery and got myself blown into the door, and half of the factory got cut off from electricity. No need to say that my parents were crapping in their pants because of me, and at the moment I am pretty sure they regretted having me. You know how some people shine in a crisis? My teenager is not one of them. When I was first diagnosed with cancer, they thought it was curable, but the treatment was intense and it meant long stretches in the hospital. Seeing me in the hospital with no hair for the first time broke my teenage son. He never visited me again and basically did everything possible to make life harder for my husband. Lying, stealing, sneaking out, fighting, shoplifting, and worst of all was picking fights at home. Picking on his little brothers, using an angry voice for all interactions. Even after being warned that I was extra grumpy because of my meds, he would come ask me if he could do something unreasonable or if I would buy him something insane, and get angry when I said no and insult me. Tell me I don't love him. He hopes I'll die. Goad me into losing my crap. Luckily I was a stick figure and couldn't do any damage in my roid rage. But he could. He would start smashing things around the house and then get physical if you tried to stop him. For example, He put his fist through the wall, and when he was restrained he smashed his head against it repeatedly to make the hole bigger. He didn't come home for a few days at a time, occasionally staying with friends but also sleeping in the subway. He was 15. As much as we love him, we couldn't handle him. We were worried about what he was doing to his little brothers and the legal issues for fighting and shoplifting. We got him referred to an inpatient program for troubled youth through his psychiatrist. Luckily for him, when I finished chemo and came home, he straightened out again. By the time a space was available in the program, the crisis had passed and he had been behaving himself for several months. Also luckily, he seems to have matured some because he hasn't fallen apart since my terminal diagnosis. Hopefully he doesn't. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.